Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. This is Mike. I'm here to try to make a video here in my computer room in front of my webcam, my new computer. And this is also my Star Trek room. You can see Mr. Spock back here over my shoulder, keeping an eye on things, keeping an eye on me. And this is where I keep all the stuff that I've collected from Star Trek conventions, posters, movies, all the stuff is in here. And it's also my junk room, right? In all the years I've lived in my house, this is the room where everything goes that either I'm about to get rid of it, or I'm recycling something, or I have nowhere else to put it. So it's always been kind of a jumbled mess. You can see my desk back here is covered with stuff. And anyway, but I don't like to make videos in here very often because the lighting is so bad for some reason. And I've tried to play a few tricks with lights tonight so that I can make this video. I've been trying to make this video for a couple of days, and I filmed it twice. Once on my cell phone, that turned out to be a disaster for all kinds of reasons. And again on this video camera that I've had for 7 years. I got it 7 years ago when I retired from my job, and I've never used it. So I thought I would dig it out of the box and give it a try. And then I realized that the attachments that go with it, I totally misplaced that they're probably buried somewhere in this room. So that didn't work out either. I filmed the video on the camera and then I realized that I couldn't upload it to the computer. So one disaster after another. But I would like to do something here tonight. It's going to be another one in my series of cinematic obsessions. Okay? So this is going to be about the woman known as the quintessential movie star, and that is Miss Joan Crawford. I hope that is fairly visible to you. Joan Crawford. Okay? Great actress. A lot of people say that she was more a movie star than an actress. I think she was both. I think she's pretty cool. Made a lot of great films over the years. And let me let me point one thing out to you that if your only experience of Joan Crawford is Mommy Dearest, which is largely a piece of not very kind fiction, and it's based on this, well, sort of based on this book by her daughter Christina, uh, which is also debatable whether or not a lot of it's true, a lot of it's fiction. I'd say it's probably a little bit of both. But if this is all you know about Joan Crawford, I would advise you to start watching some of her films because there's a lot more to her as a person and as an actress than what you might find in here, okay? So even though this movie is great fun to watch, I can watch this again and again and enjoy it every time. But to tell you the truth, this makes me think less about Joan Crawford than it does Faye Dunaway. Okay, to me, this is all about Faye Dunaway, not Joan Crawford. All right, so that's uh, that's my opinion. But what do I know? So I got a lot of my information from yeah, yeah, this book, The Films of Joan Crawford, which is really essential. Has every one of her films all through the years that she was an actress, and cast members, some of the critics of the time, what they said about her films. So this is great. So I've got some information here that I copied out of this book. Some very basic facts about Miss Joan Crawford. Okay, she was born Lucille Lesieur, right? And when she came to MGM in 1925, they ended up changing her name because they thought that LeSueur sounded too much like a sewer. So they had a contest at the studio where they allowed the fans who were getting to know this actress to give her a name, and Joan Crawford was a big winner, which is a name that she actually didn't like very much, but I think she got used to it over the years. Joan Crawford has three different birth dates listed in various biographies: 1904, '06, and '08. I don't know which one is true. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and just go for the one in the middle. 1908 is the one that she most liked to give as her birth date in later years, and that also happens to be the date of Betty Davis's birth. And I'm sure there's nothing that has nothing to do with it, right? Anyway, more about the Davis Crawford feud later on. But Joan Crawford made 81 pictures in her long career. She made 22 silent films. And I own 56 of her films, and there's one other that I've seen that I don't own, and I've only seen three of her silents. Okay, now she became a star in 1928 in a silent picture, so she was a big star at MGM and one of the most popular stars in Hollywood before the sound era. Here are some of the great actors from the silent era that she worked with. Norma Shearer, who was the queen bee at MGM and was Crawford's biggest rival, okay? Jackie Coogan, Constance Bennett, Harry Langdon, Tim McCoy, Francis X. Bushman, Lon Chaney, John Gilbert, big star at MGM. She made two films with John Gilbert. William Haynes, Ramon Navarro, Johnny Mac Brown, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who became her first husband, Rod LaRock, and Robert Montgomery. And she made 8 films with Clark Gable in the sound era. And they were very, very close friends until the day that Gable died. They had an on and off romantic relationship over the years and were very, very close. All right. And let's see, I guess that's about it. So let me start out, give me some information of where to start. If you are not a Joan Crawford fan, if you'd like to know something about her and see some of her best work, you might want to get this Warner Brothers Joan Crawford collection, 5 of her best films, starting off with one of the films that she made at MGM in 1939, The Women, where she co-starred after, I should say she was billed after Norma Shearer, Rosalind Russell, Paulette Goddard, Joan Fontaine, a terrific movie, all women, no men, directed by George Cukor, and it was one of the classic films of the year 1939, which is arguably the best year for films in the golden age. Then we get up to some of her career at Warner Brothers. Crawford started at MGM in 1925 and was there until 1943 when she voluntarily left the studio, which is different than what you hear from Mommy Dearest. She was not fired by Louis B. Mayer. She voluntarily left the studio and had to pay some money to get out of her contract. Then she signed with Warner Brothers in 1943. Her first film with the studio, her first starring role, was Mildred Pierce, for which she won her first Academy Award nomination and she won the Oscar. Great film noir, great performance by Crawford. It looks beautiful, the entire film, with the light and the shadows, and also the supporting performance by her daughter in the film, Anne Blythe, really makes it a classic. All right. Then she followed that up the next year in 1946 with this wonderful soap opera love story, Humoresque, another big hit, co-starring John Garfield. Followed up in 1947 by this fantastic dramatic film noir, Possessed, co-starring with Van Heflin. Really, really a top-notch film that I highly recommend. Then one of her last films at Warner Brothers is in the set, The Damned Don't Cry, co-starring David Bryan. This is a very good Crawford performance and another big hit. Okay, so that's the box set that I would definitely start off with if you're going to explore Joan Crawford. Then the second volume from Warner Brothers has a really nice cover. I won't take these out because they don't have the covers inside. It's just discs. But 5 films: Sadie McKee from 1934, Flamingo Road, one of her other films at Warner Brothers, I think 1949. Strange Cargo, 1940, which was her last film with Clark Gable, and really a terrific dramatic story. A Woman's Face from 1938, another classic dramatic story, and a film called Torch Song from 1953. After she had been away from MGM for several years, she was invited back in 1953 to make this musical called Torch Song, co-starring Michael Wilding Jr. and or Michael Wilding, I guess. And she got to sing and dance, even though it wasn't her singing voice. But very unusual film. I would recommend it as a curiosity as much as anything else. But she's pretty cool. Okay. Then finally we have this from Turner Classic Movies. We have Joan Crawford in the 1950s. 4 films that she made at Columbia, and they are Harriet Craig in 1950, Queen Bee in 1955, 2 of her best nasty bitch roles. Nobody could do them like Joan Crawford. Well, Betty Davis could, but these are very good films. Autumn Leaves in 1956, which was directed by Robert Aldrich, who would later direct her in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And finally, in 1957, The Story of Esther Costello, where she has a very sympathetic role for a change. And she was also in one of the films in this box set from Warner Brothers, the Warner Brothers Homefront Collection. Three films made during the war years to inspire patriotism among American moviegoers. She was in this film called Hollywood Canteen. See Betty on the cover, right? Hollywood Canteen, which is was a club in Hollywood where all the servicemen could go, and all the movie stars, they volunteered, gave their time so they could meet the servicemen and dance with them and stuff like that. And so she does a nice cameo appearance, and she spent a lot of time in this Hollywood Canteen during the war. So okay, so let's go on with some of her films in chronological order. The earliest one I have is this film from 1928, Across to Singapore. It's an adventure story co-starring Ramon Navarro. Next up is the film that made her a star in 1928, Our Dancing Daughters, in which she played the quintessential flapper from the 1920s. She gets to dance. She plays a very lovable character, and she's beautifully photographed. And after this, she was a major star. She made her sound debut in the Hollywood Review of 1929. And a lot of the people at MGM also made their sound debuts in here, like John Gilbert, Norma Shearer, Jack Benny, Marion Davies. And everybody was doing little skits and songs and dances. And Joan got to sing and dance, and she made a big hit, okay? And another silent film she made the same year, and I believe this may have been her last one. This is a sequel to Our Dancing Daughters. This is Our Modern Maidens, right? Okay. Co-starring Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who would be her first husband. Next is another creaky early silent, which is kind of fun to watch as a curio, Untamed. Next is a very cool sort of a Western movie called Montana Moon, co-starring Johnny Mac Brown, big cowboy star of the 1930s. And yet another sequel to Our Dancing Daughters. This is Our Blushing Brides. They were blushing for sure. Joan Crawford in Paid, another very dramatic story. This is her first film with Clark Gable, Dance Fools Dance. Even though Gable was way down on the cast list, he was at this time he was an up and coming contract player at MGM, wasn't yet a big star, but he got a lot of notice for this film and noticeable chemistry between the two stars, right? And the very next film they made together, Laughing Sinners. Okay, and this time Gable had a much bigger part. So after that, she did this Modern Age. Okay, another film with Gable, Possessed, not to be confused with the one from 1947. And here's one of the biggest hits of her career, the Best Picture of 1932, Grand Hotel. Crawford was, I think, third billed after Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, also with Lionel Barrymore and Wallace Beery. Garbo was the star of the film, definitely, but Crawford made a good showing of herself. She actually resembled Garbo quite a bit at this stage in her career. That may have been on purpose, I don't know, because she idolized Garbo, but they have no scenes together in the film. Still, it's a classic film, and I think Joan comes off very, very well in this. Then she went over to United Artists to make this film called Rain, which of course is based on the W. Somerset Maugham short story called Rain, and it had been filmed previously as a silent film in 1928 with Gloria Swanson called Sadie Thompson. And of course, that's the name of the character, is a prostitute. And Crawford, I think Crawford was very good in this, although it did not do very well at the box office, and the critics most of them didn't like it. So Joan was actually very disappointed that she downplayed this in later years, but I think that she came on very well. Okay, next up is co-starring with Gary Cooper, the only time great actor to pair Joan Crawford with. Dramatic wartime story, Today We Live. Next up, Gable again, with Joan Crawford still billed over him, right? Dancing Lady from 1933, which is a musical. Get to see Joan do a lot of dancing, a lot of typically classy MGM musical numbers, and it also is the film debut of Fred Astaire. Who Gets to Dance with Joan. All right. Next up, with Gable again in a film called Chained, directed by Clarence Brown. Next up, Gable and Robert Montgomery, Forsaking All Others. Nice little triangle. Joan Crawford and Robert Montgomery, No More Ladies. Okay. A lot of these silly love stories and women's pictures. I Live My Life, Joan Crawford and Brian Ahern. Okay. And she certainly did live her life. And then we have, in 1936, she played a historical figure, the gorgeous Hussy, co-starring Robert Taylor, also with Robert Young and Francho Tone, who was her second husband, and Jimmy Stewart is also in it. Okay, who does she play in this? I can't remember the name of the character she played in this. Oh well, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Joan Crawford. Right. So, see if I drop these on the floor. Try not to. Okay, continuing on. We are still in the 1930s, folks. Hard to believe, but we are. With Clark Gable, Love on the Run. Would you run from Clark Gable? Would you run from Joan Crawford? Co-starring with William Powell and Robert Montgomery again, The Last of Mrs. Cheney. Or do you say Cheney? You might. Her only co-starring role with Spencer Tracy, Mannequin. Very good film. Very nice pairing. Co-starring with Margaret Sullivan, Robert Young, and Melvyn Douglas, The Shining Hour. And here's a nice little curiosity. From the year 1939, the same year that she did The Women, which is such a classic, she did this, The Ice Follies of 1939, with, let's see, James Stewart, Lou Ayres, Louis Stone, where she was playing an ice skater sort of fashioned after Sonia Henney, who was a big star back in the 1930s. I have a feeling this is one of those films that Louis B. Mayer said, okay, you will make this film, you will be quiet. Okay, yes, sir. So, but it's still kind of fun to watch, to see all those stars trying to ice skate. Joan Crawford, Frederick March, 1940. Now we're in the 1940s. Susan and God. Also with Ruth Hussey and a very young Rita Hayworth, Bruce Cabot. This is interesting because Joan Crawford plays a very rich society lady who gets converted to Christianity, and she's suddenly walking around with a Bible everywhere. She's trying to, be very pious. It's not really phony, but a lot of her friends just aren't buying it, and she's always talking about religion. Kind of a touchy subject in a way, especially for 1940, but it's not done in a negative way. It's just kind of a character study of someone who was going through a religious conversion, a period like that in her life. And I think she does it very well. Okay. Next up, Joan Crawford, Robert Taylor, and Greer Garson, another big star at MGM, in When Ladies Meet. Okay, When Ladies Meet. Then we have an interesting pairing with John Wayne, the only time they ever worked together. Reunion in France, another wartime story. Kind of nice to see them together. And then we have Joan Crawford and Fred MacMurray. I think this is one of the last films she made at MGM, 1943, Above Suspicion, which is another wartime spy story. And I thought it was pretty cool. It had a really convoluted plot. And Crawford was not happy with this film, and I think this is one of the reasons why she wanted to get out of her contract. So after she went into Warner Brothers in the 1940s and did the films that I have already showed you, she also did this film in 1947, Daisy Kenyon. She went over to 20th Century Fox to make this, and this is part of the Fox Noir series. It co-stars Dana Andrews and Henry Fonda, but Joan is billed over both of them. Interesting little film. Okay, and one of her last films at Warner Brothers under that contract, I believe this is 1950 or 51, a film she didn't like, This Woman is Dangerous. Okay, I think it's kind of cool. Every Inch a Lady, till you look at the record. It's not very nice. Joan Crawford, Dennis Morgan, David Bryan. Okay, and after she broke away from Warner Brothers, she was independent for the rest of her career, really. In 1952, she received her third Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for this incredible thriller film noir called Sudden Fear, co-starring Jack Palance and Gloria Graham. Very cool movie. Okay. So the rest of her career, let's see, in the 1950s, ah, she did this very strange, quirky, but fun Western directed by Nicholas Ray, Johnny Guitar, um, over at Republic Studios, of all places, co-starring Mercedes McCambridge, Sterling Hayden, Scott Brady. Wow, this is a good one. Highly recommended. Then she did this nice little steamy love story, Female on the Beach, co-starring Jeff Chandler as a gigolo who tries to melt her cold, resistant heart. Does he do it? What do you think? In 1959, she did this nice little movie called The Best of Everything, which she really was doing a supporting role, but they wanted her for name value. And she's very impressive. She kind of takes over the whole thing over these young players like Hope Lang, Stephen Boyd, Susie Parker, Diane Baker. Pretty cool little movie, soap opera. And then finally, after a couple of years of not making a film, she made her major comeback along with Betty Davis in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which, along with Mildred Pierce, I think this is the film for which she is most often remembered. You know, people think of Joan Crawford, they think of this or Mildred Pierce, and this is such a classic. Both of these actresses are incredible in this. Now, Betty Davis gets all the attention, and she got the Oscar nomination. She didn't win. Joan was not nominated. But Crawford is every bit as good as Betty Davis, just very different, very quiet, very restrained, and you know, the scene where she has to make her way down the stairs, being someone who can't walk, can't move her legs. I mean, it was just a riveting scene. Uh, it's a shame she wasn't nominated for an Academy Award because I think she probably deserved it. Okay. Next up, in 1964, she made a big box office hit in William Castle's Straitjacket, which is great fun to watch. This is on a double bill with Berserk, a film that she made in 1967. She went back with William Castle and did I Saw What You Did back in 1965, which is not a great thriller or anything else, but it's still fun to watch. And she's kind of a supporting character in this, but she was given star billing for name value. Okay. Next up, 1969, she did a pilot for this TV series called Night Gallery. The very first Night Gallery episode had three short stories, and the one that she was in is called Eyes. And she's a very wealthy blind woman who basically, well, she buys the eyes of this poor, destitute man simply because she has the money and the power and she wants to see something. Very cool episode and a very good performance by Crawford, directed by Steven Spielberg, and he has spoken very nicely about Crawford over the years. I think he liked her. He liked working with her. And finally, her final film, 1970, the end of her career with Trog, where she plays a scientist who discovers a troglodyte who has somehow managed to be living in a cave for 4,000 years or something. Pretty silly. Directed by Freddie Francis. It's an English film. It's it's a sad ending to Crawford's career, really. Worth seeing at least once just to say that you've seen it. But she plays it like a Shakespeare. You know, she is completely dedicated to the story, to the character, and she does the best she can. And that is the end of my Crawford video. Sorry to keep you so long, and I'm sorry for the visuals here. I I would recommend any of you who don't know a lot or anything at all about Joan Crawford to explore her films and see what she was all about. Give her a chance as an actress, and don't worry so much about what all the gossips keep saying about her over the years. All right, and maybe I'll make a video later on about the supposed Betty Davis Joan Crawford feud. Yeah. Speaking of fiction,